Are you a podcaster? Maybe you've got that big idea and you're looking for a network to join. The multi-award-winning Ozcast Network can get your content to eyes and ears all over the world. Join now for the first month free, and you could be featuring this sound at the beginning of your podcast.
Ozcast.
Simply head to ozcastnetwork.com for details.
So Apple typically holds 2 major events per year. Sometimes there's a surprise event, but we always come to expect WWDC and a September event containing an iPhone and other releases. So out of the 2, which do you look forward to most, Lance?
WWDC, to be honest.
I know, I reckon too. I actually do. It is quite interesting when I say that to people, because everyone just assumes that, okay, if you're a huge Apple fan, then iPhone is the biggest thing, and it is a very big thing, but there's always just so much excitement that comes with WWDC in the sense that because you're not having to buy new hardware to experience it, and it's predominantly about software, these are all the things that they're discussing mostly apply to products that you might have.
Exactly.
So it's the only killer bit about it is there's that wait between the June event and the September release.
Yeah, it is a long wait, but yeah, I always get hyped for WWDC because, like you said, new software for Macs, for phones, for watches, for everything that I already own. It's like I love being able to, I love the way Apple pushes out free updates and free features to products that you already own. It's fantastic.
And how so many people embrace the updates too. I mean, you've seen all those stats of iOS adoption versus Android adoption, etc. And it's just staggeringly different. And it is just good that they can support so many devices that go, back several years. So the reason I bring this up is, I guess, out of the blue. I mean, I should have been expecting it because they had sort of early-ish invites this time last year for WWDC 2017, but we have the 2018 announcement. So the event will take place on June 4th to 8th, that's American dates, at the same McHenry Convention Center in San Jose, California. I was instantly very taken by the theme, absolutely love it. What's your initial reaction on this design style they've chosen?
It's really quite stunning. It's really like just the fact that it is just all white. It is one color, but there's so much depth and texture, and it's someone's worked on that for a long time, and they are so proud of it, and they should be. It's beautiful.
The absolute best part is if you go to the WWDC website, you have the animated reveal of it, and the bit I love about that is because there's so much going on is you can just watch it over and over again and notice something new, like the little toggles switching and stuff spinning around. And it's instantly, because it's made up of 3D versions of elements and icons that we already know and love, everything is very familiar. But what typically happens with these sort of designs in the announcement is that people look for clues. So can you find any form of hints or anything that gives you a sense of what could be at this year's event?
No, I haven't looked at it for too much. I mean, I'm looking at it right now. But I was quite taken by that animation when I first went to the WWDC website. It was pretty phenomenal. But I mean, there's a lot there. There's a lot on the screen. So if there is a clue in there, I'm sure within the next couple of weeks there'll be reports of people, piecing things together. Even if Apple hasn't got a clue there at all, I'm sure there's plenty to work with.
I about half an hour before we started recording this, I actually posted an article under the Simon Says section at appleslice.com.au. And so what I've done is I've actually made the source videos and stills downloadable for people if you want to use it as wallpapers. And I went one step further in the way that the portrait style still they had wasn't set at quite the right ratio for iPhone 10. So I actually Photoshop edited a version where I expanded the top and the bottom, as well as made it so the design elements sat centrally. So if you want a iPhone 10 ready version of this artwork as your wallpaper, then definitely head to the Simon Says section on our website. And also just jot down a few words as to what I thought as kind of like how Apple's been handling this. So what I think is that there probably were clues in previous years, but I would say at least over the past few years that it's been quite ambiguous, and it's more just they've created like a striking design versus actually trying to put any hints in there. Because with so many factory supplier leaks and like little software bits being discovered, I think Apple are really kind of like holding their cards close to their chest, even more so, considering this is usually a software, dominant event. But in 2017, of course, we saw a lot of hardware announced too. So on that same sort of vein, I then looked back at the past few years. So 2017 had that big group of people with a negative space form, the Apple logo. Loved the design. And what was great is the actual source file on the Apple website was in SVG. So it was a vector-based format, so you could actually zoom completely right in and have perfect quality. And I was just looking at every single possible thing that all the little people were doing that made up the image. And it really didn't allude to anything other than at the time I thought, oh, this must be something to do with people coming together, like multi-users, group FaceTime calls, none of which we got. So 2016 had those lines of colored code. I mean, it's a developers conference. Developers work in code. That's kind of as far as it went. I can see. And 2015 had this sort of kaleidoscope style overlay of the app shapes. And this is still a bit broad because it's like the focus in that event were new apps. So they launched Apple Music. They had big updates to news and maps and stuff. But, given that developers develop apps, it's not surprising. So I think that they're being purposefully sort of vague in their choice of design elements that they put in. Yeah, so what's your take on that?
They have dropped a few clues here and there in a few previous ones, but I mean, now that we even look back, there's nothing that stands out over the last few years. So I think they really have probably moved away from it. That I think they're given that every year, whenever they have a big conference, there's massive leaks all the time of all the products and even some software updates and stuff. So I think that the more they can keep to their chest and not put these leaks out or not make any hints and just have people surprised on the day, I think that's better.
Yeah, it certainly seems like a hardware event like the September one is definitely a lot harder to try and keep things on the down low, given just so many supply chains and analysts and everything. And people are just so much more hardcore on trying to put out rumors or find evidence for rumors and everything that, they said that they want to double down on secrecy, and I've always sort of said to Nick that they need to like quadruple down on secrecy, really. Now, one of the biggest surprises to me, just to cap this off, is... So it's at the McHenry Convention Center again. Of course, they had the iPhone event at Apple Park, and I thought, great, this is going to be the place that they're going to hold all their future events. Now, obviously, WWDC is a lot bigger because they got all these workshops going on. There's adjacent buildings and other conferences nearby. So I can understand why they didn't have it at Apple Park this time round, but do you ever think they could shift it to there?
Yeah, well, that was my thoughts as well. I mean, it's not just the conference where they show off their new stuff. There is a whole lot of things. Well, it's like 3 or 4 days, isn't it? Yeah, it's 4 days of constant workshops and things. So Apple Park is where they make Apple products, where they design products, where they do all their software and everything. So there's got to be people constantly working there. So they've got that the theater there at Apple Park that they can use. But do they have the space for, a whole bunch of developers to be hanging around at Apple Park and not, and getting into places they shouldn't and seeing things they shouldn't, or even just the space to hold all of the workshops and everything? I don't know. But yeah, that's probably the main reason I could think of why they wouldn't have WWDC at Apple Park.
Yeah, exactly. I certainly agree there. But can you imagine, and this segues us into the water cooler section, the amount of people, if they did hold WWDC at Apple Park, the amount of people that would be walking into windows?
This story never gets old. It's been developing for a while. I like your pun.
Yes.
Yeah. So yeah, Apple's greatest battle with Windows so far seems to be their the glass windows in there that are so clean and clear and without edges within Apple Park that employees are walking into them and hurting themselves. So yeah, the Cupertino building, they're officially concerned with Apple Park's cafeteria doors being indistinguishable from glass walls. So I assume people are walking up to them and trying to open walls because they can't tell where the door is. So a contractor's walked into one, and there's multiple instances of employees requiring medical attention, which is outside of the cafeteria, just in random areas around Apple Park, which is quite concerning.
Wow.
Yeah, and employee incidents occurred on the first few days at Apple Park, and some employees started putting post-it notes on the walls just to inform others to make sure that, you know, other people don't walk into the doors.
This is not a door, yeah.
Yeah, but they were removed since they distracted from the building design. I can understand why they wouldn't want just slap-happy post-it notes around the place. But the official solution seems to be black rectangular stickers with rounded corners.
Yeah,
so that sounds good.
Very kind of Apple-like with the rounded corners.
Yeah, they've gotten Johnny Ive in and said, Johnny, you need to fix this. You've got a design flaw in your building, and we need to fix it. And yeah, I mean, it just goes to. I mean, I'm surprised that they could even do that. I mean, I don't know if it's the same around the world, but I think in Australia, when you've got a glass door, you have to have something on it. You know, they have these little vinyl things that purposely show, hey, there is something here.
Yeah, definitely.
So, yeah, I mean, that didn't stop me when I was younger. I actually ran through a glass door.
Oh, that was always my fear, yeah.
So, yeah, a few stitches in the foot, but all good.
Yeah, it's pretty crazy. A lot of people have been throwing heat at Johnny Ive, being like, you know, he's probably just blaming the public and saying it's, you know, it's their stupidity or something, and I kind of feel like it's just one of those unfortunate oversights. You know, obviously he wanted this grand vision of just like complete glass, you know, seamless and everything, and be able to see right into it, and really opens up the space, and it, you know, helps diminish any disconnect between the inside and the outside. That's great. So I mean, he is very, very detailed focused with everything he does, but he's still human. So, you know, some people are trying to, as I said, some people are trying to say, oh, he's just so far up himself that he just didn't even think about the safety of others. And I think that is going too far. He certainly is in a different mindset to a lot of people. And it's just one of those unfortunate things that has now hopefully been solved.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think one man can think of everything. He can think of the design perspective, and you need a workplace health and safety person to come in and give their judgment on it. So fire the workplace health and safety person that looked over it and move on.
Yes, exactly.
No, don't fire them, but don't blame Johnny Ive. He's a designer. Is there to make things look beautiful. And function well as well, but we're not perfect. He's not perfect.
You can't be everything. Exactly. Now, directly relating to WWDC, of course, we expect to see all forms of software updates, and one that has been, I feel like Apple have kind of removed their focus away from macOS, obviously with the popularity of iPhone, and so they put a lot of effort into iOS. Unfortunately, with macOS High Sierra, there has been some security issues, and it has been buggy. It does feel like that they didn't put as much effort into it as they should have. You know, I certainly appreciate the updates they did to it, but it's seemingly, if you're looking from a like visual or user interface perspective, there wasn't much that changed. It was more just stuff to do with new file types for compression and that sort of thing and speed. So that's cool. That being said, I think a lot of people are fearing that are Apple ever going to give the Mac the attention it deserves? And then there's also the idea of actually universal apps. So apps that are designed in one way that can like work seamlessly on a Mac platform and degrade in a graceful way for iPad, and then down to iPhone, and then also being able to open up, say, an iPhone app on your Mac, etc. So I've always kind of struggled as to exactly what I want, what I can try and tell someone as to what I want from the Mac. The idea of universal apps is kind of like the biggest shake-up, like the next big thing that they could actually do with it. And that aspect is covered in a cool new concept by this guy called Alvaro Pabezio from Spain. He's a marketing student at the Uni of Navarra, and on his Behance account, which I'll put a link in the show notes to this, he posted this quite impressive concept. So I'm not on board with everything in it, but I found that there is plenty to love in this, and we're going to kind of drill down into it. But what was your initial reaction on this?
I really, really like the visuals that they've had. It's quite simplistic, and especially the dark mode that they've got in there. A lot of the features I think that he was talking about has listed maybe a little bit far-fetched.
Exactly.
And I don't think you'd ever get all of that in one go. It'd probably be a buggy mess if you did it.
It really would.
yeah. But just overall, I am interested in quite a heavy refresh of the Mac, or even just doubling down on the bugs. To be honest, making it absolutely rock solid. But yeah, this concept definitely looks the part. It definitely looks Apple.
Yeah, he certainly put a good amount of detail into, nailing down like the same fonts and everything in the same way that, the level of the rounded corners and the level of, blurred opacity and all that sort of stuff. Because there are plenty of people that do concepts that you're just like, okay, you're trying to make it look Apple-ish, but you really haven't nailed the fine details. And I think he's gone that extra level, which is great. So I think we'll just go sort of back and forth on these, maybe one or two at a time, different sort of features that he covered in this concept. So can start off with the control center. He's definitely made it a lot more iOS-like. Now in the descriptive paragraphs that he's put for each section, he references 3D touch. So, I mean, technically that's Force Touch on Mac, but they could easily probably reframe that to 3D touch, I guess. It would be good to get more use out of that. The big one being the universal apps. If you're running iOS 12 on your iPhone or iPad, then you'll be able to open up those apps on your Mac. The content within these apps will automatically adapt and scale to your screen and the right resolution, which is really cool. And the menu options will work like desktop apps do. So the Mac version of an app. So an app will look a certain way on an iPad, you open it up on a Mac, and you still got your file and menu and all that sort of stuff. So it's not like you're looking at an iPad on the Mac screen. And he included the idea of, so in iOS on iPad, you've got app suggestions. And so basically that same thing applied to the dock, but basically you're on your Mac and then it's showing you suggestions of this is the iOS equivalent, which I thought was pretty cool. And then, some stuff in the Siri space.
Yeah, so I quite like this. He was pitching a proactive Siri, so a Siri that offers suggestions depending on what you're working on. So you don't actually call up Siri. It's just going to automatically bring options to you and buttons to you that are relevant to what you're doing. So, for example, they had in Messages, if you're in Messages, you could hit a button that says reply with an emoji. Or if you're in Settings, it could come up with turn on the location settings. When you had a file selected, say an image file, it could automatically give you the option to open it in Photoshop. without having to kind of, I suppose if you tend to open images in Photoshop, your normal click isn't automatically going to go to Photoshop. It's going to go to your image viewer, but it'd pop up with that button and say, do you want it in Photoshop? And you can just hit that, which is quite ingenious, to be honest. And if they were able to, I was thinking that if they were able to merge that kind of thing in with the touch bar, so kind of the side of the touch bar could bring in a button or two, based on certain Apple apps, and that Siri is picking for you. I think that'd be quite good.
I instantly thought of the touch bar with these whole sort of suggestions and how things are changing depending on what you're working in. So yeah, that was pretty cool.
It actually, not every Mac has a touch bar. Obviously, the iMacs don't. But if the touch bar stayed around, I think that would be the best place for it completely. It'd be less distracting than on the screen. And if you were reaching for a key or going to move the mouse to, I think it would be kind of in your peripheral vision and really just, I think that'd be the best place for it. And the other one was, say you're composing an email and you had a message about a meeting, it could pop up and say, find a free slot this week. So you could automatically pick a spot in your calendar and suggest a time, which would be really neat. There was some notification center stuff, as you were saying earlier. So it looks a bit more iOS-like with some redesigned widgets. It would be nice to have a bit of uniformity across the notification centers, because I don't really use notification center on the Mac. I forget it exists, to be honest.
Exactly.
So,
exactly.
Yeah, being able to swipe over to the side and get those, quick little apps like, and customize it and put your calculator app in there and things like that, rather than having it on your bottom dock, that'd be great. They had a quick add event button, and all the notifications were grouped and updated together, which is definitely needed on the Mac.
and iOS.
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. Which they frustratingly had grouped notifications in around, I think it was iOS 7 or 6, and then that was then undone. So anyway, that's always one of the biggest complaints from any big Android fan is like, and their first thing they jump on is, the notifications are all over the place and they're not grouped together.
Yeah. Let's just have the options.
I just wish they would do it, so then they could kind of like, for our usability, and then so they can also just sort of quash that little complaint.
Yeah, I would love to be able to have some notification customization, and the fact that you could group them by app if you want, group them by newest notification to oldest or oldest to newest, and even like have say an app priority. That you could filter and say, I want my messages highest priority. They're going to show up the top of the notification center, and then mail, and then calendar invites, and so on and so forth, down to your game apps or something that you do want a notification for, but you don't want it sitting at the top of your notification screen, even if it was the newest notification that came in 5 minutes ago. Your message you got 10 minutes ago that you didn't read stays at the top.
That is a good suggestion.
Yeah.
Yeah, definitely.
Bit of Apple likes to do everything for us, but I think it'd be nice to just a little bit of flexibility would be good.
Yeah, I can agree with that. One that a lot of people have been asking for ages in any form of Apple product is a genuine dark mode. So, I mean, that's pretty self-explanatory. He made it look really good in the concept. Currently with my Apple TV, I use where the lights to dark adjusts based on my time. So that's always good. So nighttime viewing, it instantly goes to dark mode, etc. And daytime, it's all fresh and white. So I mean, I'd love that sort of thing, just like locked in with the time. Sunrise, sunset.
You're in the design space, Simon.
Yes.
What advantages are there to dark mode other than you're in the dark and it doesn't blast the screen? Is there any other like advantages?
I kind of tend to, so like a lot of my Adobe apps, you can set like what color you want. So they got like a dark and a mid dark, and then sort of a mid light, then a real light. And I've kind of been flipping back and forth between it because I used to love light all the time because it just, I know that's what I'd grown accustomed to, and I do use. I've now, in the recent years, switched to dark but not like fully black. So I kind of I like whatever I'm working on to kind of be the focus. So that helps with like the dark surround, but I don't want it to be so black that it doesn't feel like I'm using a program in it.
That's in DOS.
Yeah. Like if it's so black, it just doesn't feel like I can see the rest of the interface. Like I like to see where things connect and everything. Right. So, I like some dark modes, put it that way. So like Twitter has a nighttime dark mode, but I don't really like the look of it. It's kind of like too dark, so I end up just using the generic white background version all the time. But it's primarily when it comes to nighttime work, I'm a big stickler for having the brightness at the right level. I hate looking at full bright screens at nighttime. I spend all day and night times in front of screens. Anything to help, reduce eye strain is a good thing. So it'd be great to have the option for dark mode for sure.
Yeah, especially in the mobile devices, because there are a few apps that support them, and when they do have that mode, I do choose it. Just for when you're in a darker space, like whether it's at home or in the cinema or actually I've used it a bit at church. The Bible app that I use actually has a dark mode. So I turn that on, and it's really good to
Bible has a dark mode.
Yeah, it's got a dark mode.
Yeah,
but it's really handy because it's like you can have your brightness up fairly bright so you can see the text, but it's not lighting up your face and distracting people. So I get it for a phone. I just wasn't quite across the need for it on a Mac. But then again, I suppose people do their portable devices. You do take them into public places in the dark sometimes. So.
I know people that do code love any form of dark mode just because obviously you're just staring at a whole ton of characters on the screen all the time. And obviously they're set at a certain size. So, anything to help reduce eye strain there is great. And the fact that also from an energy perspective, a darker mode would use less energy, less light being emitted. So there's that too.
True.
So one that I really liked was device syncing. So this is an actual category in settings, and it's just a whole new way to manage every device connected to your Mac or linked to your Apple ID. So this one seemed a bit far-fetched in the sense that it's like said that you could just do it all completely wirelessly. That would be awesome, but I doubt that we'd get that at least straight away. But the best part for me is it just removed any need for iTunes in terms of managing your doing stuff with your devices on your Mac. So
no, that's a good concept. Although Apple seem to be going away from connecting the Mac to your phone or anything like that, making everything just stand alone. But I would like the Mac is really the central hub. It's the computer. It's the most powerful device, and having a dedicated app or something that's just for managing those devices and settings or transferring files and things like that. I think that's a really good idea.
Yeah, just it's sort of like an expansion upon just viewing your iCloud account on your phone, so you can see all your devices linked to it and that, but it sort of only goes so far, whereas this has like full on management of each device, which I think would be really cool. But I've kind of got this anyway with I've got an app called iMazing, and that's what I do all my automatic backups and management too for all my different devices. So I've kind of got this functionality anyway, but an actual Apple version would be cool. And so what's next? They've got a new sidebar in the Finder window.
Yeah, redesigning the sidebar for Finder and other things. It has a bit more of a cleaner design and an iOS-ish aesthetic, with bubbles. I didn't notice what the bubbles were. What are the bubbles?
Well, all they meant was just the different segmentation of the sections at the side. They're in their own sort of rounded rectangle, so they're kind of referring to that separation as bubbles.
Yeah, it's kind of like the notification center. I can see that.
Yeah, that sort of layout, but it's bubbles is probably a bit of a dumb name for it. But anyway.
Well, yeah, I get it though, because it kind of takes away the need for like a title or something. A title,
Yes.
this is these things, and then a title, this is these things. You could just, you know what they are, so just have it's kind of like I get it. It's a bubble. It is a bubble.
Yes.
Yeah. And then they had projects.
Like so it's
which-
like an actual collaborative section.
So you can add other people and like say all work on a folder. So obviously this is kind of iCloud. So you've got your documents in iCloud, and in your Finder window you can add people to be able to view and edit all of the files within a certain area rather than just document by document.
Yeah, it's similar to Dropbox type stuff. You know, people working on they're all collaborating on files within a certain folder, you know, which in this instance he's calling projects because it's like, well, you're working on something, so it's a project. But I like the fact that, it shows you which contacts are actually included in it, in their sort of little, circular icon for each one. And it actually shows you when there's people nearby. So if it's similar to kind of like, detecting with AirDrop, it's kind of like, oh, there's someone nearby, and then bam, you can.
And then I want to add them in because we're working together. And
then they've included a chat section too, which is similar to like comments in Dropbox.
Yeah. All right. So, and then he's taken Apple Music outside of iTunes, which is interesting.
Yes. A dedicated Apple Music app.
Yeah, a complete redesign only for music, decluttered, and ties in with the Finder and the sidebar layout.
So it's very immediately very familiar because they're sort of carrying through this new aesthetic all through the new apps.
So do you think that he would, in this concept, so essentially you'd open the Apple Music app, what would that leave iTunes doing? Just managing your local library?
Well, so he had two other versions that look similar to Apple Music. So you're doing away with iTunes basically, and you've got Apple Music as a music only. You've got the App Store. So these are all very similarly designed, and they look really nice. And then there's iTunes Store. So, and I'm guessing it'd probably be tied in with iTunes Store. I'm not really sure how they'd handle that. Because people do stuff like iTunes Match as well, but you can access that sort of stuff, say via HomePod and that as well. So it's sort of like loosely tied in with Apple Music as well. They've got a bit of cleaning up to do there. The only thing I didn't like is that in the iTunes Store concept is he tied in the books purchases. I honestly think they've got a dedicated iBooks app anyway, so I think that they would just do the same thing but just for books.
Yeah, which they renamed Books, didn't they? And now I think the latest
unrenamed.
It's gone back. It's gone back to iBooks.
Yeah.
So that's quite strange.
Just in the betas though.
Yeah.
So nothing. It's not officially Books. This is just in iOS betas. So I do think it will end up becoming just Books, but for whatever reason that was undone. So. And lastly, we have messages. Of course, a couple of years ago, you had iMessage had a whole bunch of stuff added to it. Obviously, the iMessage App Store, and messages on Mac has always been lagging in the sense that the screen effects have been like a dumbed down version of what you get, and various other restrictions. So the version of this concept is tied a lot more closely to the iOS version. It does state that you can send an emoji, but that would mean that your Mac would have to have a true depth camera system. So that seemed a bit far-fetched to me, unless they're obviously going down the line of introducing that into a Mac, which would be cool. I'm expecting a Face ID unlock for Mac at some point. So you'd be able to do it then. But yeah, I think that was probably a bit of wishful thinking in sense of actually rolling it out this time round.
I think he was stretching when it comes to just it's meant to be a macOS 11 concept, which should be all software updates. That heavily requires a hardware update. Yeah. So it seemed a little bit out of place.
I mean, as soon as they do introduce a true depth camera system in the Mac, then sure, like that'll make sense. Yeah. And then directly related to that, there was a new camera app, and he's talking about being able to take portrait photos with all the portrait effects. So same deal, that relies on true depth camera. But what is cool is, it actually has the full iMessage App Store support in there, and then the screen effects actually looking like the iOS version. So at least bringing this up into the same level as the iOS version in terms of just the actual visual side of it and the effects and it actually looking, like it's not like this sort of weird dumbed down version. That certainly seems like a given to me, I reckon. Okay, so that wraps up the macOS 11 concept, which, given the number in the name, he's obviously trying to make a push for it being a significant jump over just a 10-point-something update. We've already covered things that we think were a bit far-fetched about it, but in terms of things I actually didn't like, I liked a lot of it. I think things like how the actual menu bar is sort of hidden away, that's not going to work out because that's just another click people have to do unless they hover over and it reveals or something. But I know a lot of people are going to make a big fuss about that, and people that have commented on this concept so far that's one of their main gripes with it. The Siri icon, they've obviously tried to mirror what it looks like on HomePod, so I don't really know if that would come to fruition or not. So the hard thing about awesome concepts like this is that when the actual WWDC does come around and it's not packed full of all this stuff, you're kind of like a little bit let down. So how are you actually how are you, Lance, feeling that, how they're going to handle the future of Mac from now? Do you think do you think it's too early for the idea of universal apps? I know that they've rumored to have working on it, but does it feel too soon?
Yeah, this year definitely feels too soon. I think overall High Sierra, as much as it had some really nice features, and that they overhauled the entire file system, so that would have taken years and years and years and so much work. So I understand the state of macOS High Sierra, but at the same time, it's definitely got more bugs than any previous version that I've used, and is generally leaving me wanting for sure. So more than ever this year, what I'm hoping for is less features, like a few nice. I mean, I'm waiting for messages in the cloud. That'd be nice, but that's across all systems.
Exactly.
A few minor tweaks and a few little features would be nice, but more so just give us a rock solid update. Macs and Apple stuff used to be known for just it. Used to be able to say it just works. Yeah, you turn it on, it just works, and it still is a whole lot better than using a Windows machine, but it doesn't always just work. And I think they really need to shore up that, get back to that. What's the word I am looking for? Reputation.
Yes, exactly.
They need to bring that reputation back. As Apple products just work, and I think out of all products at the moment, the Mac is the buggiest. Yeah,
they just need that sense of ironclad stability. This is just my absolute reliable Mac that's just gonna keep going and it's not gonna let me down. Yeah. And it sounds like they've taken a similar approach with iOS 12 this year too. Less features, more stability. Because to be honest, iOS 11 has actually been definitely one of the more buggier ones as well. Just even down to little visual things, like even right now my iPhone 10, sometimes randomly icons will just disappear and come back again. I've had the actual dock down the bottom just completely fly off screen, and little things like that. So
wow.
Yeah. So I would welcome that too. If this is kind of like the year to sort of regroup, refocus, get things sorted, iron out those bugs, still introduce something kind of to excite people. I'd be happy with that. To dive right into all this stuff in this concept would be I wouldn't feel confident in it. I would expect I would see it on stage, be like, wow, and then expect the beta to just be absolutely terrible. So
yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
We're going to quickly switch over to Deal Down Under. So there's a little bit of Australian-specific news with Apple Music Radio. So Australia now has multiple live radio news channels in Apple Music. We have ABC News Radio, Radio National, ABC Grandstand, and then there's individual ABC radio channels for all the capital cities. Now, all of these used to only be available via the ABC Listen app. So I think they've obviously realised that people aren't actually going into the app. I did use it for a little bit, but yeah. And I feel like this is most likely a starting point, and in terms of stuff for Australia with live news, and yeah, they're just going to expand from here, because already with HomePod, you ask about news and you get to choose between ABC as your source, Channel 7 and SBS, I think. So
I think it's 9.
9, sorry. Yeah. I should know that because it mentions it every time I ask about the news. So, but I always stick with the ABC one. So, it's something that's it's always promising when they're discussing features at things like WWDC, and obviously a lot of it pertains to America and other countries. It's usually coming soon, or support starting with these vendors and others to be added later. So it's good when stuff is actually happening.
It would be good, actually. This is quite strange timing, because it was actually, I think it was less than a week ago, my wife was listening to Radio National in the car.
Yeah.
And they were interviewing someone about the state of the gaming industry in Australia.
Okay.
So then she phoned me and said, hey, you should tune into Radio National and have a listen to this because you'll be interested. And I'm at home and I'm like, I don't own a radio. I was like, hang on, where do I go? What do I do from this? I need an app, or I need to go to the website, or what do I do? And I ended up just staying on the phone to her and listening to the radio through her car. So if it was in Apple Music and I knew exactly where to go, that would have been good.
So there you go. Radio broadcasting still lives in the digital platform. Now, speaking of digital platforms, Apple have launched a short film, an extended advert, if you will, for HomePod, and I'm absolutely loving it. So it is brought to you by the Oscar-winning director Spike Jonze. I certainly knew of his work, but the person who features in it is a musician dancer called FKA Twigs. People, I think, say FKA might stand for formerly known as, but yeah, that's sort of Wikipedia type trivia. I'd never heard of her. I found out that from this that she has been a backup dancer for high-profile artists like Kylie Minogue, Ed Sheeran, Jessie J, etc. So she's from UK, and she's obviously a lot bigger there than in Australia. But yeah, she's certainly her role in the advert. She definitely pulls it off very well, and the choreography and everything. So yeah, before we sort of dig into what we like and don't like. You only just watched this advert today.
Yeah, a couple of hours ago.
Yeah, and you messaged me about it. So what's your feeling on this approach to Apple advertising?
Well, I just went to the website and Apple website, and it said, watch the video, and I was like, okay, this is going to be a little 30-minute video about HomePod, but it really was a short film. I did not expect it to. I'm like, oh, it's going to be 30 seconds or it's going to be a minute. And I think it was like 4 to 5 minutes.
Yeah, it's 4 minutes.
Yeah, it was, and it really gripped me from the beginning. Like, even though at the beginning I'm like, oh, this will end soon. But then once it took off, it was like a bit of a roller coaster ride of, to be honest, it was less about HomePod than I would have expected. I mean, it was all, she was dancing to the music from HomePod, and the intro bit where she's all feeling sad, had a hard day, and just kind of asks the HomePod to play some music for her. That was neat. But yeah, I just thought a lot of time and effort and visual effects has gone into this, short film. But I don't think it quite showed off HomePod like I would have hoped it would have, essentially. What do you think?
Yeah, I know what you mean, but I might as well just jump into the pros, what I like about it, because this addresses that. Yes, I really like the fact that it is like this short film format. But from the start, it feels very real and relatable in terms of just like, okay, I don't live in a capital city, but obviously I've been there plenty of times and traveled around there, but there's still that aspect of going to work and day in, day out, and that sort of drag for her commute on the way home, and she's just like looking so tired, and even just the way that she kind of like says excuse me to get through the passengers is so what you see on trains and stuff. And when she actually finally gets into the door, and obviously she's got bags, puts that down, and then she just kind of very lethargically asks Siri to play something that I like. She just pulled that off really well, and I think that piece there is the selling piece to HomePod. So obviously there's all the dancing, the energy, everything. That's great. It's a spectacle, looks wonderful. But to me, it's mainly it's just showing that the ease of use and how natural it is to interact with Siri in your home. Like, she didn't have to pick up a device or anything. She just looked like she wanted to go to bed, and she had that expression on her face, and she just asked it. And that is, while I'm not moping around like that, generally, HomePod does have that effect of where just even before this podcast, I need to know some quick calculations. I was measuring up. We got this big steel rabbit cage thing that we want trying to sell. Had measurements from that. I wanted to, get some calculations, and straight off the bat, just standing anywhere sort of within the main space of the house, just ask HomePod to do it, and I get the figure I want. And it's just, there is no primary effort to be like, quick, I've got to find my device. I've got to raise my wrist for the watch or anything like that. And that to me is the actual selling part of the advert earlier on in the actual, duration of it.
Did that kind of thing come naturally to you? Did you think, oh, hang, I can use HomePod for this? Or it was just, it's become part of your life so much that you automatically go there without even considering?
Some things. Weather has become so natural because we've got stuff to do with like home opens and everything with the house and stuff, and that I'm wanting to know that sort of information because it's, we got someone coming up we got a home open on Saturday at this particular time. I'm like, I really hope the weather's good, and I just ask that particular day, hello Siri, what's the weather going to be like on Saturday at 1 p.m, and it tells me. And that sort of, those type of queries and calculations and stuff and timers have become very, like, I don't even really have to think about it. I still sometimes, like, I'll look in the direction of the HomePod just to make sure it picked it up. But, like, the more you do it, the more you sort of think, okay, well, if I'm facing away, just raise your voice a little bit higher. And then basically it'll pick it up. So, yeah, I mean, we're going to cover this because we're going to wrap up the 1 month experience soon. So we'll save it for that. But what else I love about the ad is just the use of CGI and practical effects. So that's the sort of abstract, surrealist, kind of cubist nature of it is definitely up my alley. I love that sort of artwork. And just how they've blended, there's obviously some things where you think, okay, well, they kind of pulled it off practically. And so that's actually really quite seamless because sometimes in movies you can tell that's really CGI, that's not, etc. And I think they've pulled that off very well. Yeah,
I was really, really impressed. It was really, it was really pretty.
It was really pretty.
Kind of blew my mind as I went. Like I was like, these special effects, someone's like, I don't know. It's just like I did not expect that from watching what I thought was going to be a 30 to 1 minute ad to have this 4-minute experience with such amazing visual effects.
I think it's more because when we think of like wow visual effects in movies, you think of like over the top bright colors. Like this is, it's CGI. Say you got like the Ready Player One trailer. That's very OTT CGI, right? And so this just like, it's almost like they've taken the idea behind True Tone and applied it to the advert. So they had like the colder tones, dreary sort of when she's on the train, she gets in the house. And then she's chilling out and it kind of like gets a bit warmer, that sort of like later night vibe. And then when the colors and everything and the dancing starts up, it's not just like obnoxiously bright. Like it still looks like that could be wallpaper. That could be actual physical moving objects. And that's what I love is they've tried to keep the color realistic too. And so it feels less like a whole, motion capture / CGI green screen fest and more like actual practical effects.
Yeah, I agree. It's awesome.
So for me, I think the minimal presence of the physical HomePod, like not actually seeing it, I think that's effective. Because if she was dancing all the time and it's constantly flicking back to the HomePod, which is a static object anyway, it doesn't really have, when music's playing, you got your plus and minus volume controls on the top and that's it, right? It'd be a bit weird. It'd be like, oh, hey, just so you don't forget HomePod. Oh, hey, also she's dancing around. And yeah, it's because of the HomePod. Like,
No,
I
mean,
like that. Yeah.
Unless she referred back to it and asked Siri to turn the volume up or something, and flicked it back maybe once or twice. But then again, you only wanted the one song, so you're not going to skip songs. You would probably only turn the volume up. But, halfway through or something, and then it could have, like, even upped the visual at that point, kind of as well. I thought that would have been pretty cool and would have kind of brought it back, hey, this ad is about HomePod. But, I mean, it's a 4-minute thing. They're not exactly going to show it on TV. It's people are seeking it out, really.
Yeah.
So, but, yeah, it's very impressive.
I also like... So this kind of covers that, is that a lot of fans think that it should show more than just the music. I think there's more ads similar to this to come, whether it is as visual as this or not. But I think there will be an ad that will be more about the Siri queries and all that sort of stuff, and more like what you'd expect for a smart speaker ad, or like stuff that they've done with, Google Home and Alexa ads. Whereas this is like directly carries on from the original HomePod announcement of, this is your musicologist, this is a high-end music speaker, and it's like a direct advert version of that.
Absolutely.
Pretty much. So, yes, I've covered it with Nick as well. Siri does have some shortcomings. Obviously, there are improvements that we're expecting in the pipeline WWDC. So maybe they'll be holding off until more stuff like that is coming before they push adverts focused around Siri. Because apparently the Siri team didn't find out about HomePod, the existence of HomePod, until 2 years ago. And it's been 6 years in the making, the product.
Oh, okay. I didn't know it had been that long. Yeah. What? And the Siri team didn't know that it was
don't know until 2 years ago about the existence of the HomePod.
Well, that's not very long to be able to, considering Siri is such a major part of HomePod, and the usage of it. I mean, that definitely explains some of the limitations of HomePod Siri. Not launching and not being able to do a lot of the things that Amazon Echo or Google Home and the competition can do.
Yeah, I think that it just comes back to that. Like, we are expecting improvements. They can come via software updates. It's not like there's any new, like, the hardware itself is definitely more than powerful enough to handle that. So yeah, when they go more down that road and move away from it's a high-end music speaker and more about the smart speaker side of stuff, then I think that's when you'll see the adverts. And the only thing that I think is a con to the short film length ads is that the actual ad length versions, the 15-second, 20, 30-second versions, don't have the same impact, because it's just like a little montage version of it. So now that I've rattled off for a fair while on that, is there anything else you'd like to add about this advert?
This isn't the only ad you're going to see for HomePod. And if they've made this, little short film, you never know. There might be a series coming, and yeah, you'll see more interactions and more smarts, and the fact that Siri can, hear you even when it's playing music and things like that. There's a lot more features to show off in future ads. But I kind of like the simplisticness of what this ad was about. It was about music. It was about interacting with HomePod, asking it to play you music, and enjoying that music. And that is the marketing that Apple has been putting behind HomePod from the beginning. It is a smart speaker that sounds amazing. So
yeah, exactly.
It works exactly with their message for now.
Also kind of makes sense of the whole Siri team not knowing about it until 2 years ago scenario, is that it's like they always were building a high-end speaker, and then the rise of these Alexa, these Echoes and Google Homes were coming about. So they're like, okay, well, we better add Siri into it. So, okay, so that's a HomePod advertisement, but the best way to find out about it is from actual experience. So, Lance, yourself, obviously not having the HomePod, it's been pretty much just over a month since I've had it, and you sort of ran up a list of things that you'd like to ask me about it.
Yeah, I really wanted to touch base on HomePod after a month. I mean, it has been just over a month since it was released. I know you got it on day one.
Yep.
And there's only so much you can find out about HomePod by watching ads or reading specs or having a listen in the store. So I'm really curious about a few things over the past month of how you found HomePod. So first one is, what is a feature that amazes you when you use your HomePod, Simon?
Okay, so the voice detection of Siri commands during medium to loud playback. I know how it works. We've explained how it works in terms of, obviously it's subtracting whatever it's outputting away from what the microphone's listening to. That being said, when it actually happens, actually used in real life, it still is like, I can't believe that works. And I love to show people that. So that always still gets me as like, oh wow, I really do love this product. As I addressed before, the way it makes Siri the most natural form to use, just walking around, not even really thinking about it. The only thing you have to think about is, obviously, if you're in a different room in the house, you could possibly get it to work by kind of like yelling quite loudly. But if you're still mine's in quite an open space where the lounge meets the kitchen, so I can kind of walk all around that space and pretty much get it to respond the vast majority of the time. The presence of sound, so that was a big push for it. It's not immediately apparent. So when I first got HomePod, I started playing a song, because I had this whole thing in my mind of like, this is high quality sound. And I was like, okay, yeah, it does sound good, but I didn't really know what I was meant to be listening for. It's a really bizarre sort of situation you're in, because you're like, am I meant to be blown away? Like, this does sound good. I don't really know how it could improve, but it was this weird thing of just being like marketed the idea of like, yeah, this rocks the house, that sort of thing, right?
Yeah.
And you turn it up and you get to like 90%. You're like, yeah, that is loud. Like, it could go louder, sort of scenario, right? But it's not until you're actually setting music and you got it playing, and you might go outside the house and come back in and it's still playing. You might go into another other end of the house, come back into the main space, and you're like, wow, it really does. It's there. It's not like you're standing, 5 meters away and it's like I'm struggling to hear it or anything like that. It's like within the space that I've set it.
Yeah.
No matter the distance, I feel like I'm still hearing. I'm still getting a good sense of the song.
So kind of regardless of the volume, it fills the space.
Yes. Yeah. It's very. It's not. It's, as I like to point out, it's not like the whole Beats thing where it's like trying to push the bass beyond what it's meant to be and that sort of thing. It's true to the sound of the music you're playing. That does vary slightly. Like, some styles of music sort of come off better than others, but generally you can put something on and know that it's going to sound good.
Are there any features, like when you're using HomePod, that disappoint you?
If you've had a successful query before and then Siri gets it wrong, that's frustrating.
Yeah.
It doesn't happen that much, but when I first started up Siri, first started up HomePod, and like the next day and the kids are around, I thought, they'd probably love to dance or something. So the first thing I thought was Macarena. I said, hello Siri, play Macarena. Did it perfectly the next time. Demoed it to someone else because I knew it worked. Did it perfectly next time. Then a few days later, I went to do the same thing because the kids came out. I thought, oh, they like this song. And it's like playing Mark Farina. And every time it's playing Mark Farina, I'm like, I don't care about Mark Farina. Mark Farina is like sort of some jazz artist. Yeah, sure, he's good at what he does, but it's not Macarena. Like, it's not what I asked for. And then I had to get really specific with Play Macarena by Los Del Rio. And I kind of like had to overly pronounce the Los Del Rio to get it right. Yeah. And that was just very frustrating. I'm like, how did it go from knowing the song based on just the song title and no artist to then giving me Mark bloody Farina?
I know. Well, that's quite strange because even if you mumbled it a bit more or it didn't pick up your voice as much, you would think that like Apple Music keeps track of what you listen to.
Yeah.
So it knows you listened to Macarena 2 days ago.
Yeah.
So it'd be nice if, and I assume you don't listen to much Mark Farina or jazz. So.
No, I might now. I might like just to feel like, well, I've asked about. Siri keeps pushing Mark Farina on me. Obviously,
you know what you should do? You should ask HomePod for Mark Farina.
Yes.
See if they play Macarena.
That'd be hilarious. Some other frustrations are getting movie information. So it uses like IMDb style for it, right? So you ask for a movie, and if the movie has multiple matches of the title, it'll be like, do you mean... So the example I have is I said, hello Siri, tell me... I said, what's Lady Bird about? And it said, do you mean Lady Bird 2018 or Lady Bird like 2018 something or other, like some other slight variation of a listing? And I said, Lady Bird 2018. It's like, sorry, I can't do that on HomePod. And I'm like, okay, what? Like, that's weird. So I said it exactly how you wanted it. Yeah. Then I tried the query again. I said 2018, still no luck. Tried it a third time. Says, do you mean Lady Bird 2018 or Lady Bird 2018 directorial, whatever? And I just said Lady Bird. And then it started to read it to me.
That's
like
odd.
It was, it's like there was some weird sort of
I think that's
a
a Siri limitation rather than a home, because I had a similar thing. I think I wanted it to tell me the actors in Black Panther on my phone. Yeah. And I asked it, and I had to go 3 times to get it to understand what I was saying when I said Black Panther.
Yeah.
And then it did, and it asked me like 3 different versions. And then I repeated the first one, and then it just said, I don't know what you mean.
Yeah.
It's like, I just repeated exactly what you wanted me to...
I know.
Yeah. I don't know. It's just... I
end up finding with HomePod, I end up finding the knack of how to do it, but the fact that I had to find the knack of how to do it is frustrating. I was a bit like, but anyway, that's again things that can be improved with Siri. And in terms of specific to HomePod, the actual positioning of the HomePod is actually a bit more critical to the sound and the microphones than I thought. So I'm sitting at a table where I work, where the HomePod's on the wooden table in the corner, so I'm very close to it, like within a meter of it. But because I'm situated more to the side to it, based on where the power cable is, I kind of have to actually raise my voice a bit louder than I expect where I'm sitting, even though I'm so close to it. It's almost like the microphones are are more sensitive, or expecting to pick stuff up from the very closer to the front of it.
Okay.
It's not a huge issue sort of thing, because it's not often I'll be sitting there asking like, HomePod to play music right next to my head sort of thing. But that was a little bit weird. To me, I think it's partly to do with our position on the table in terms of a table where there are chairs surrounding it. So it's not like on a dedicated like table that I can use just for HomePod. It's sort of like the only space in the house so far that I've managed to put it, that could work. So I kind of feel like maybe if it was positioned a bit higher or on an actual table without chairs surrounding it, it might get a bit less confused in terms of bouncing stuff back and forth. But it's a slight niggle.
So obviously we're still waiting on a couple of software features like multi-room and AirPlay 2. But if, say, WWDC this year, if they're going to announce any kind of software update to HomePod, what would you like to see?
I'm expecting there to be a fair bit with HomePod. Ones that they could definitely get right straight away would be multiple timers, which is just Siri in general. Multi-user, we've been asking for multi-user on a bunch of different platforms for Apple, but an actual multi-user from voice for HomePod is a must. I think the other competitor devices do it. There's no reason why they shouldn't bring it to Siri. To HomePod. And I think there's other little aspects to the iOS version of Siri that they can bring across, just like simple things like telling jokes. So everyone goes, oh, great, the Google Home can tell me jokes. And I'm like, oh, Siri on my phone can tell me jokes, but Siri on HomePod can't. So just little things like that.
So, some of those things are kind of a little bit mind-boggling as to why not.
Maybe if the Siri team was given an extra year, they could have ticked those boxes. And while Nick and I spoke about it being good, there not being EQ controls, and obviously, audio, there'll be audio files out there that want EQ controls. I just think the option would be good. So if there's actual, so HomePod sort of lives within the Home app on your phone. If when you open it, there's actually not much to do with it, right? So if they kind of added some stuff in there, that'd be good. And I think that could be where they can put EQ. And I've also discovered over the last month of listening, I have a propensity for listening to like metal or heavier stuff, right? And it's almost like whatever HomePod's deciding its automatic EQ settings are for that music, it's not as good as what they've put into more mainstream genres like say rock on the radio or like hip hop or pop music, because you instantly play like any of the songs they put in the advert or any chart stuff and it sounds really good on a HomePod. And I listened to metal and it still sounds good, but it's like the kick isn't quite as prominent as I want, or like the where the guitars are sitting in relation to the vocals isn't quite hitting as how I'd expect it to. So anytime I'm trying to show off HomePod to someone, I don't usually go play the music, play them like heavy music. Like I'd play them something that's got a bit more breathing space. So, so that's a small thing.
Speakers like that are small, singular speakers like that are always going to struggle.
Yeah, that's what I thought too. It's just
with
so much going
heavy music like that.
Yeah.
And then like if they're gonna do a hardware refresh, so HomePod 2.
Yep.
what do you reckon hardware wise they could change or should change?
Well, for me, I have no issue with the hardware at all so far. There is the whole ring gate thing with the silicone base that happened to some wooden tables. Didn't happen to me at all. But I guess if they could rectify that just for people to stop complaints there. And, yes, I would be disappointed if I was someone and it did leave a ring on my wooden table. I understand how it works. It's like, like a chemical-based thing. But just something to allow for that would be good. I absolutely love the symmetrical design and the lack of buttons. I really can't picture a way to improve it visually. I think the design is really timeless. I think in 5 years, it won't look outdated at all. It'll still be like that. That is like a fantastic design. As I've said before, it's so Johnny Ive too, except for there's no windows to walk into, so that's good. And internally, they might upgrade the chip at some point. It's got an A8 into it. That's more than enough than it needs for what it's doing. So they might upgrade it to A9 next time or jump to A10 or something. But
personally, I find the lack of any auxiliary in or anything like it's very Apple, but honestly, if I spent $500 on a HomePod or even $1,000 on multiple HomePods to have stereo, I'd want to use them in my media room. Not just for Siri and music, but also to play back movies and TV sound through them, since they're such good speakers.
Given the iPhones don't have a headphone jack, it doesn't really surprise me. So,
yeah, but there's so much room on the HomePod for a jack.
Yeah, no, I get it. It would actually ruin the design though. Like I get that. I don't have an issue with it, just because, and I am putting like a lot of faith in what AirPlay 2 will bring as well, and it's worked very well for me so far, so no issue. But yeah, there will be, and especially like audio files and stuff that would want that hardwired connection. And could it possibly go louder by another 10%? That could be cool too. I'm not playing my HomePod at full volume. It definitely does go loud enough. Don't get me wrong, but it's like I want to know that it can go louder. Like, I want to not be playing it at 95% and then think I'm nearly maxing this out. The great thing is playing it at 95%, no distortion whatsoever. So it definitely holds its own.
That's pretty incredible.
Yeah, so that's HomePod after 1 month.
So yeah, there's a few cons in there, but mostly positive stuff.
It's pretty much down to Siri and software updates.
But overall, music quality and everything it's a fantastic speaker.
Well, I did think, I was like, if I want it to go louder, just get a second one. Wait for the stereo pairing, but I don't think my wife would quite be too fond of that. So,
but you could just buy it for her.
Yeah, get a white one,
Simon.
and that'd be weird. They're having black on one side, white on the other. I'd have to rearrange my entire house to be yin yang just to allow for it.
Well, if it was me, I'd probably have one in one room and one in the other.
Yeah, that's true.
Normally, but then if you're going to have a party or something, bring them both into the main area.
Well, so Nick got 2. One of our listeners also got 2. And Zach from 9 to 5 Mac got 6.
6?
So 6. Yeah. So that's
considering they don't pair or play together at the moment.
You can actually get you can do it via there's like a Mac app for it where you can actually sort of like fake that. But yeah, I've got the singular one, so I'm not losing out. So
yeah,
that brings us to the end of episode 46 of Apple Slice with Lance again filling the shoes of Nick. We do cover little bits and post little things in between episodes. And if you want to get part of that action, then find Apple Slice on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and YouTube, or just search in your podcast player if you'd like to subscribe. And as I said, we post all the episodes to appleslice.com.au. And just before this episode, I posted some WWDC wallpapers under the Simon Says section. So check that out too. We are part of the Ozcast network. Definitely check out other great podcasts and ones I listen to, such as AB Film Review, Yeah G'day, Hong Kong Confidential, and there's a lot more, and they are constantly growing too. They're over the 20 podcast mark at this point. Check that out at ozcastnetwork.com. That's AUSCAST network.com. Thanks again for stepping in, Lance. Thanks again for staying up at night too. I know there's the time difference with you in Brisbane. Is there anything else you'd like to add?
No, thanks for having me again, Simon. Thanks for a good chat. It's been awesome.
Yeah, no worries. Just get ready to load the obligatory cheers in about 2 seconds, and I'll catch you in the next episode, maybe.
Cheers.
Thanks. Cool.
Are you a podcaster? Maybe you've got that big idea and you're looking for a network to join. The multi-award-winning Ozcast network can get your content to eyes and ears all over the world. Join now for the first month free, and you could be featuring this sound at the beginning of your podcast.
Ozcast.
Simply head to ozcastnetwork.com for details.